Villains aren't born, they're forged in the crucible of life. They emerge from hardship, betrayal, and a single devastating moment that shatters their world. The path to villainy often begins with a heart that once beat like a hero's, but over time, it twists under the weight of an indifferent world. A championship stolen, a trust betrayed, a lifetime spent overlooked, unappreciated. These are the seeds. Their actions don't stem from inherent evil, but from a relentless need to reclaim what was taken, to prove their worth in a world that refused to acknowledge it. Every underhanded move is a response to injustice, a desperate attempt to level a playing field that was always rigged against them. They become villains not by choice, but because the world left them no other option. But then, there are some who don't care about justice, some who just want to watch the world burn. He didn't fall. He didn't descend. He didn't break. He walked in, looked around, saw no one worthy, and chose to conquer it. Brock Lesnar is not a man molded by pain. He is pain made flesh. He doesn't want your sympathy. He doesn't care about your cheers or your boos, your tears or joy. He doesn't chase redemption or legacy. Lesnar exists to dominate, to destroy, to walk into your farewell moment and remind you that stories don't end with hugs and confetti. The real world doesn't care about closure. It only cares about the violence. And at SummerSlam 2025, Brock Lesnar delivered just that. He hadn't been seen on WWE television in nearly 2 years. That Brock, the one who raised Cody's arm, seemed different, maybe even changed. Retirement whispers grew louder. Fans debated whether the Beast had softened. But Brock Lesnar doesn't soften. He adapts, he evolves, but he never forgets. So when John Cena knelt at the center of the ring at SummerSlam 2025, after a brutal war with Cody Rhodes soaked in tears, chants, and legacy, Brock Lesnar returned, unannounced, uninvited, and unforgiving. He marched to the ring like Cena's curtain call was an insult, as if the man who once embodied hustle, loyalty, and respect had dared to take a final bow in his arena. No words, no warning. Lesnar scooped up the 17-time world champion like dead weight and drove him into the mat with an F5 that echoed through 60,000 stunned fans. That was his announcement. The Beast is back. But to understand why that moment felt so violent, so raw, so final, you have to understand what came before. Lesnar didn't simply disappear after 2023. He didn't ride off into the sunset. He was erased. In January 2024, a lawsuit was filed that shook the foundations of WWE's empire. Janel Grant accused Vince McMahon and WWE of physical abuse and trafficking. The allegations exposed a shadowy network of coercion and exploitation, one that had existed behind the scenes of wrestling's most powerful company for years. And among the names mentioned, over 40 times, was an ex-UFC star. Lesnar was never charged. He was not listed as a defendant. The lawsuit didn't accuse him of assault or direct wrongdoing, but it did claim Vince McMahon tried to use Janel Grant as leverage to keep Lesnar loyal. According to the lawsuit, McMahon flew Lesnar to Connecticut in July 2021 for a meeting Grant was ordered to attend. She claims Vince expected her to please Lesnar, physically, if necessary, as part of a broader plan to maintain control over one of WWE's biggest draws. The moment, she says, never turned physical, but the implication was enough. Enough to stain Lesnar's name, enough to push him off screen, enough for WWE to pull his Royal Rumble 2024 plans, strip his merchandise, and pretend for nearly 18 months that Brock Lesnar had never existed. But it's not that easy to kill a monster. When his music hit at SummerSlam, the crowd erupted, but not in unison. Yes, the pop was loud. It always is when chaos walks down the ramp. But beneath the roar was something colder: confusion, disgust, anger. The return trended worldwide, but not with celebration. Many were furious. Furious that a man named in a federal lawsuit, even peripherally, was not only welcomed back, but handed the final scene of one of the most emotional main events in recent WWE memory. No press conference followed. WWE canceled it last minute. Instead of open questions, they gave us a studio broadcast, pre-taped, sanitized, talking heads, because they knew. The first question would be about Brock Lesnar, and they didn't want to answer it. Triple H later tried to frame it as Cena's idea, that Brock was on Cena's farewell wish list, that this was about respect, closure, storytelling. But that's a half-truth at best, because this wasn't about Cena. It never is. It's always about the corporate greed, the numbers, the myth of the money printer, and Brock Lesnar's name alone still breaks the banks. When the Beast returns, titles don't matter, timelines fracture, careers go missing. Plans, those carefully plotted blueprints Triple H once swore would define this era, are rewritten mid-sentence. Lesnar doesn't fit into stories. He tears out the pages, sets the book on fire, and dares everyone to breathe the smoke. And now that he's back, every throne in WWE is under threat. Cody Rhodes may be the champion, but SummerSlam wasn't about him. His pyro hit, his theme played, his hand was raised. But the final shot wasn't him holding gold. It was John Cena unconscious, and Brock Lesnar standing over him like a closing chapter. The Beast doesn't need a belt to be the final boss. He never has. But his presence turns every belt into collateral. Because once Lesnar enters the frame, no one is safe. Not the champion, not the rising stars, not the long-term plans that were meant to usher in a new era. That's the real damage. For the last year, WWE was pretending to evolve. Seth Rollins wore the workhorse crown and built credibility through pain. Gunther redefined violence as legitimacy. LA Knight rode lightning in a bottle. Cody Rhodes finished the story. For once, the top of the card wasn't drowning in part-timers, nostalgia acts, or 50-year-old icons. But Lesnar's return shattered that illusion. Suddenly, everything feels small again. Cody doesn't look like the face of the company. He looks like a placeholder waiting to be eaten. Seth Rollins, a secondary champion caught in another man's shadow. Roman Reigns, still gone. CM Punk, a sideshow. Gunther, a name on Lesnar's dinner plate. There's a vacuum at the top, and Brock Lesnar smells blood. He could dismantle Gunther before the ring general ever headlines WrestleMania. He could rip Cody's second reign to shreds before Survivor Series. He could drag John Cena into one final match, not for respect, but for dominance, for legacy theft, for the satisfaction of sending him away for good. And all of this happens because WWE opened the door. They reinvited the chaos, the nostalgia crutch, the storm in human form. The man who once held the Universal Championship hostage for over 500 days while barely showing up, now walks back in with no consequences, no questions, no context. And in doing so, they've destabilized everything they claimed to build. The new regime was supposed to be different. Triple H spoke of structure, of long-term vision, of elevating the next generation. He made promises, both in the ring and in boardrooms, that WWE would no longer depend on the past to define its future. But all of that fades the second Lesnar walks down the ramp. Because when Brock is here, everything else feels like a supporting act. The thrones Triple H was building, carefully, deliberately, are already cracking. And the ones sitting on them, they feel it. But Lesnar's return isn't just a chapter in someone else's story. It is the story. Because Brock Lesnar isn't just a man. He's a legacy of dominance, a figure carved from both history and myth. NCAA champion, UFC heavyweight king, WWE destroyer. He broke the streak. He ended Cena's reign in under 20 minutes. He turned Kofi Kingston's miracle into a 7-second massacre. He doesn't play by wrestling's rules. He rewrites them through fear. He is not a champion. He is the storm that ends them. And now he's back, drenched in controversy, unbothered, untouched. Because Lesnar doesn't return to finish stories. He returns to remind you who the real author has always been. What his return truly signals is something bigger than one feud. Bigger than Cena. Bigger than Cody. It's about WWE's soul and what kind of company it wants to be in this new era of corporate wrestling. Over the past year, WWE has lived in limbo. The TKO merger turned wrestling into a spreadsheet. Vince McMahon resigned again. Advertising invaded storylines. Layoffs gutted the locker room. Creativity bent to corporate appeasement. And now, in the middle of that storm, Lesnar reappears. Not as a man, not even as a monster, but as a symbol of everything WWE refuses to let go of. The nostalgia pop, the alpha male archetype, the belief that certain stars are too big to be held accountable. No matter how many new faces they push, when the money dips, the company turns back to its monsters. Brock Lesnar is the product of a machine that rewards power and punishes weakness. He doesn't exist to be redeemed, he exists to devour. So what now? Cena is laid out. Cody holds the title, but the shadow behind him just grew darker. The lawsuit remains unresolved. The crowd is divided, and the old gods have returned. But maybe this isn't the end of something. Maybe it's the beginning of a reckoning. Because every time Brock Lesnar shows up, he doesn't just destroy, he exposes. He forces WWE to confront what it truly values. Is it legacy or loyalty? Growth or nostalgia? Safety or danger? And maybe that's the challenge this new era needs. If WWE is serious about change, about building a future that doesn't collapse every time an old monster knocks, the answer won't come from sidelining Lesnar. It'll come from confronting him, from rising, even when the system leans toward chaos, from proving that the men already here, Cody, Seth, Gunther, even the next wave, aren't just placeholders, they're pillars. Because Lesnar's return doesn't have to be a reset button. It can be a line in the sand, a moment where the new generation stops asking for permission and starts taking control. The beast is back, but the kingdom doesn't have to fall. Not if the ones who built it are ready to defend it. Thank you for watching. Tap the screen to discover how Seth Rollins turned a real injury into the greatest con wrestling's ever seen. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives every week.